Welcome to Bea TV, Becoming Everything You Are, sponsored by Raytheon Technologies, and I'm your host, Marcia Jews. During the Black Engineer of the Year Awards Conference, I've assisted participants in unearthing their stellar achievements in STEM excellence with the goal of revealing their career and advancing brilliance of STEM essence. Bea STEM Conference is the place where trailblazing STEM professionals turn their STEM story into STEM stardom. And now, please welcome our next guest.
Hello, this is Nate Price, Environmental Engineer and Project Manager for Jacobs. A little tidbit about me, I recently started playing tennis. I really enjoy the competition and getting to meet new people. Looking forward to seeing everybody at Bea.
That was fast. How you doing?
Good. Yes,
and now you're into tennis. I love it.
I did pick up tennis. My wife actually played, so we both went to North Carolina A&T undergrad. She played tennis at North Carolina A&T, and I'd never played tennis till about a year ago. And my daughter's playing now. My sons are playing now. So I said, well, I'll get involved. I'm sitting there watching them play. I said I might as well play myself, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I used to play with several friends of mine, and after COVID, we haven't picked it back up, but the exercise is wonderful. Yes. So you're an engineer. What made you decide to become an engineer?
Well, I actually had a black male transportation engineer come to my 8th grade math class, and he gave us a example problem of a four-way intersection and how they use engineering to map out like who gets to go when the green light, how long the green light's gonna be green, how long the red light's gonna be red, and how they keep traffic flowing. So that sparked my interest in engineering, and I asked him, specifically what he did and what he went to school for. And he told me civil engineering. So I went back home and I told my mom that I wanted to do civil engineering and kind of researched it more to figure out what all it entails. And I liked it because it has a wide range of options. So you're not stuck in just one thing. And then actually my mother brought me to Bea when I was in high school. She bring me and my brother here as well because she wanted us to see other Black people doing what we look to do in the future, so that we know that it's not just huge. About this goal or aspiration we have, but there's other people who we can lean on to ask questions about as we're going along as well.
Mm-hmm. And in your job, what are your top 3 responsibilities?
So one of them is what's called an activity manager. So it's kind of like a client service manager for a base. So I have a Navy base in Virginia, Naval Weapons Station, Yorktown, that I oversee all the environmental work we do for that base. I have a team of about 10 project managers that fall underneath me, and then they have a team for each of their projects that they put together of engineers, science, and geologists. So I'm kind of responsible as the face of Jacobs for that base with the client. I have a direct report Navy client, and then I have regulators that I respond to. So whenever there's issues, concerns, or they need something, I'm the person they go to first, and then I make sure I work with my team to get them what they need. So that's one of my first responsibilities. And my other one is I'm operations manager for our Virginia Beach office. So I oversee all things within the office, whether it be on the transportation engineering side, environmental side, our water engineering side as well. So I oversee the office. Right now, there's office renovations, so I'm helping our facilities lead oversee those as we speak. We just actually had contractors coming today who didn't have the paperwork they needed, so we were kind of trying to scramble to get them the paperwork they needed to do the work that we asked them to do. So that's one of my other jobs. And then I'm also in charge of the intern program for all of our environmental solutions across U.S. and Canada. So they put me in charge of that about 2 years ago. We only had maybe 6 interns across environmental solutions group. And then the first year I was on board working with all of our town supervisors across the U.S. and Canada, we were able to get 35 interns. And then this past year, we had 55 interns. So we're doing good as far as actually having a real intern program, making sure they're getting involved. And more importantly than just getting them in the door is converting them to full-time hires. So that's about an 85% success rate of converting them from intern to full-time hires. So that's been probably one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed, is seeing those who started as an intern, because that's how I started with the company as an intern, and they came on.
Oh, I love it.
And I've been here now almost 15 years.
So in 15 years, you're now managing a budget of about how much?
For my base, I've got about 15 anywhere between 15 to $20 million worth of work that we got going on at the base.
Hmm. And so, in looking at it, how did you imagine yourself where you are today?
I can't say that I did. I think it's more of not saying no to opportunities.
Mm,
I think a lot of times people get in their own way as far as they think, well, I don't have the experience to do that. Well, if somebody's coming and ask you to do it, whether you have the experience or not, they see something in you that you may not see in yourself yet. So don't pass up on those opportunities. So that's been the biggest thing I preach to the staff I supervise. I've got about 20 people that I directly supervise. And one of the biggest things I preach to them is don't be afraid to take on new opportunities. You never know what you're going to like, what you don't like based off, because a lot of times they come out of school and they're like, well, I did this in school and I didn't really like it. Well, what you do in the work environment is completely different from what you do in school. So give it a
mhm,
try, see if you like it. And you never know, even if it's something small right now, it may open up opportunities for bigger things later on.
mhm. That's a powerful statement because you don't even, my favorite saying is, you don't even know what you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And you got to go through that process to figure it all out.
Right.
That's really powerful. What does leadership mean to you?
To me, leadership is not about necessarily being the one in front. It's more
Mm,
about making sure that your people are taken care of, and making sure that yes, you have to make the final call on things, but you want to get their input. You want to make them feel like their input is valued and that everybody has a seat at the table and that they know, okay, Nate's got to make the final call on what we do. But if I come with a good idea, he's actually going to listen to what I say. And if it's a really good idea, he may very well implement it. And that's the biggest thing for me for leadership. You don't want to work in a silo where everybody just thinks that you got to make the decision. It's your decision. They can't put any input into it. And then they got to live with whatever decision you make.
mhm. And that's really powerful because too often leaders don't always lead, quote unquote, in allowing their people to grow and to be the best that they can be. And too often, or many times, people are just trying to figure it out. And if
Right.
you give them the latitude, they may come up with the next best thing that might be valued at how many millions or billions of dollars because you allowed them the opportunity to explore
Right.
and to trust their gut, right?
Right. Right. And that's one of the things I try to tell people, especially when I'm doing interviews and even when I bring on new hires, is I tell them, I'm going to treat you like an adult until you show me that you can't be an adult. So you got to look at this as
Ooh.
this is your career. This is what you make of it. I'm here to help you get to where you want to be, but I'm not going to direct you into what it is you want to do. If you decide, you want to take path B and I think maybe path A might be better, I'll make a suggestion. But at the end of the day, it's your career and I'm gonna help guide you as best I can, but I'm not here to hold your hand or force you into doing something you don't want to do. So that's part of my philosophy is you have to give people the leeway to figure the things out themselves. Sometimes you can give them all the guidance, and it's the same thing whether it's working on the work or at home. I've got 3 kids at home, and the same thing with them. Like I'm guiding them the way they need to go, but if they decide to go a different direction, there's only so much. At some point, they're getting to that age of being adults, and at some point, you're gonna have to let them kind of figure it out on their own. So
There's something they used to say. I'm from South Bend, Indiana, right? And they try to act like they're a big town, but it's a little country town, right? And so a couple of my aunts used to say, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink,
exactly,
right? Right?
exactly.
And too often. So as you are looking at the landscape where you are today and diversity within your organization, Jacobs is a big organization.
Yes.
And so, from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, how do you see how they're moving, and what can you support that they've been doing?
So I've got a couple of things. So one, the role as the ES intern lead that came through because they wanted to diversify the type of interns they were getting. So they wanted to make sure that there was actual requisitions put out, and it wasn't just well, I've got a nephew or I got a child that needs interns, so I'm gonna bring them in for this time. It was we actually put out requisitions as if this is an entry level hire. They go through an interview process, so it gives everybody a fair chance. So we go to Bayer, we go to NESB, we go to Society of Women Engineers, we go to Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers conferences, and we recruit directly from those. Because the biggest thing I've seen is people always say, "Well, I can't find candidates that
Mhm.
that that are diverse." But I'm like, "Well, where are you going?" Because they're there. you know,
Mhm.
I go, so I'm actually the university ambassador for the company for North Carolina A&T, and that's my alma mater. And we develop a relationship with them there that is beyond just going to career fairs. Like we do lobby days, we do industry days, we um, participate in conferences for them. We sponsor students to go to like their competitions, Carolinas conference, things of that nature. So that way it gives them another opportunity to learn more about us, but it gives us another opportunity to learn more about them and their students and their faculty. Finding ways, we're doing capstone projects with the faculty and staff and the senior students as well, so we can give them some ideas of what we do in the industry, but also see what get some thoughts from them as students. They may have some great ideas that we haven't thought about.
Mhm.
That's something that we do. But then within the company, they have employee resource groups or employee networks is what they call them. One of them is Harambe, that's our Black Employee Network, and I've been on the global leadership team there for the past 4 years as a junior recruitment lead. And part of our goal is to push more for getting hires from NSBE, getting hires from Bayer, getting hires from Society of Women Engineers. And it's not just, a lot of times people go to career fairs and they get the resumes and then they kind of fall on by the wayside and nobody follows up on them. So that's where I come in. I'm the follow-up person.
Okay.
Let's track down these people that we think are 4 and 5 star top tier recruits. We're going to follow with them afterwards. If they apply to a position, we're going to reach out directly to that hiring manager of that position and say, hey, we met them at the career fair. We think they'd be a great fit within this company, because that way it puts them on the spot too. It gets the resume in front of them. Like I'll send them the resume and everything. That way they apply online, but then this is another way, another conduit to say, hey, this person, applied to this position. I think they'd be a great fit, because that's part of it is you can't just say, well, apply for this and then we'll see what happens. You've got to be a little more proactive, and that's kind of where we've been at. And our employee network groups do a lot of work in the community. We just went to Robert Frost Elementary here in the Maryland area and did a STEM event. We had some people go there for that. So it's not just a social club. It's not a social gathering. We do a lot of stuff in the community. We do a lot of stuff at universities to try to, be that change we're seeking. If we want people that look like us to be in the company, then we got to make sure we're doing what we need to do on our end to help them get in the company.
I like you.
Thank you.
I like you. You are serious, brother. I mean, really. I love what you're doing, and
Yeah.
you are intentional.
Yeah.
You have you've created the infrastructure for your team to be intentional.
Right.
You're
And
not
that's
giving them an open door for something to slip and fall on the sidelines.
right. Right. And that's the big thing is you gotta get rid of all the excuses that people have. So like if we know kind of what people look for resumes, like we have resume critique and interview prep sessions with students. So we'll meet with them. We'll set up a 30-minute call. We'll have a team, maybe 4 or 5 of us on the call, and we'll sit down with the student. We'll tell them to start. We're doing this out of love. So if we're hard on you, it's not because it's because we want you to succeed. So we go through their resume and we tell them, look, these are the things that we know the recruiters and hiring managers are going to look for. So this is how we want you to reformat your resume, or these are things we want you to point out. And then if they get to the interview stage and we say, hey, let us know what day and time you got to interview. We'll look to set up an interview prep session before your interview to help make sure you're good to go before you start that interview. So those are the things that we've implemented to make sure that we're giving everybody the best shot of because a lot of times they're coming from situations where they may be the first person in their family to go to college. So they're working from a deficit in terms of there's nobody to tell them at home, these are things you should expect. These are things you have to work on. Like I know when my kids, I can tell them internships, you need to be looking at those. This is how your resume should look. These are the type of events you should attend. But if I've never been to college or never experienced any of this, then how do I know what to tell them? So that's where we try to step in and help out as much as we possibly can.
So you're here because you won an award.
Yeah.
And I want to know what that award was.
Corporate promotion of education in STEM.
Corporate promotion of education in STEM. And so that means that if you're at the corporate level, that's in a decision making level.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
And that's really powerful. I'm really excited about your award, but moreover, I'm excited about you and what you're doing with your position, how you're positioning these people coming in, some of these young people, some of these new hires, to get a real understanding of the culture and how to participate in it. And
Right.
that's not an easy move.
No, it takes some work, but if it's something that's important to you, you'll make the time and you'll make the ability to put in their effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I want folks to have, like, I actually I've got all three of my interns from last summer that are returning in my office in Virginia Beach full time this summer, and one of them, I remember she's Hispanic. We met her at Society of Women Engineers conference, and she asked me. She said, "Well, do you have any women that are in leadership positions?" I said, "Well, I can point to our program manager for our Navy Clean program is a woman." And she was like, you're actually one of the first people when I went to these interviews that actually could give me an example. A lot of them say, well, we're working on it. Or I said, no, we're not. I'm not just saying we have women or we have minorities in places. Like, we actually have those. We're not, we're working to increase the numbers, but we actually have people in place that are in the minority. It's not all, white males that are typical in most engineering environments.
Mm-hmm. But I think what also is really powerful, though, Nathaniel, is that your leadership, your managers, your direct reports that you are directly reporting to, they trust you. And
Yes.
so your decisions have been such that they can be, your work can be respected because of the outcome,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And it sounds like you're mission oriented, so you're not going to miss much.
That's true. That's true.
Right?
That's
I
true.
like that smile, right? Because it's on point. You better be about mission, being mission oriented if you want to play at the level where you are right now and making and affecting change within your organization.
Right.
That's huge. Give me three things that middle school students and then three things that seniors in high school should be considering now as they start looking to the future.
The work ethic is one of the biggest ones, because that work ethic, and then the second one is time management, and then start getting used to making connections, just meeting with people, introducing yourself to folks, because I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, especially as engineers. A lot of times you're introverted, so getting yourself used to meeting folks, getting yourself past that initial hesitation to walk up to somebody and just introduce yourself. So working on your elevator pitch is
Mm-hmm.
important. And that's middle school or high school. Even at the middle school age, you want to start getting yourself in that mindset of, I can go out there and talk to somebody and tell them what it is that I want to do, and not being afraid to tell people what you want to do. Like, I tell people all the time, like my staff that I supervise, if nobody knows what it is you want to accomplish, how can anybody help you reach your goals? You can't be so afraid to tell people what it is that you want to accomplish, that because now I can pass you up for a position not knowing that it's something you're interested in.
Right.
And I used the example of one time, like the activity manager role that I'm in now. The first base that I was on activity manager for, I almost got passed up for a position, not because I wasn't gonna, they didn't think I'd be good at it. It's because they didn't think I wanted it. And so
Ah,
when I went and told them, hey, this is something I'm interested in, they're like, oh, okay, you're interested? Yeah, then great. We'll put you at the position. But I would have, if I didn't speak up, I would have got passed by. And then I would have been sitting there in the corner mad because I would have been thinking, but they don't trust me and they don't value me. And in actuality, they thought they were doing me a favor. So I always tell people, you've got to be not afraid to let people know what it is you want to accomplish.
mhm. And that's absolutely on point because you need to use your voice.
Yes.
Use your voice. Tell people what you like and what you don't like. You have to be able to do that. And is that, let's back into this. Is that because we're afraid of what might be the answer that we don't want to hear?
I firmly believe that's a lot of it. I mean, I've had people. I remember I had an employee who needed, I think it was like a 12% raise to get them in line with their peers, because for years, like their previous supervisor had been like kind of lowballing them. And
Mm.
everybody told me, well, you can't get that big of a raise. You're going to have to ask for a smaller one and then ask for another one later on. And I said, okay. So I just want to ask, my supervisor, I said, hey, this is what she needs to get her in line with her peers. And she was like, yeah, no problem. But if I had been like what everybody else told me, I'd have went back to her and said, well, I can't give you the raise that you deserve at this moment. If we got to work around it and see if we can get it later. And when all that could have been avoided if I just asked the question.
That's right.
But a lot of times people are just afraid. Like they'll tell you, oh, I don't think they're going to. And maybe that was part of my upbringing. My mom and dad both served. My dad served 24 years in the Army. My mom served 10 years in the Army Reserves. And
Mhm.
their thing was always, you need to not be afraid to ask for stuff. Like I remember going to McDonald's or Wendy's or something, and I was like a little kid, and I'd be afraid to go up to the counter and ask for extra ketchup or something. They were like, no, you're gonna go and at the time it seemed a little extra, But now I understand why they were doing it, because it get me used to going in front of other people and
Mhm.
asking for what I needed.
And not being afraid, being
Right.
straight up, this is it.
Right.
Right. I think the other thing that is not being afraid, but also making certain that you are clear about what you're really asking.
Yes, that is important, and that is part of. So we do um, yearly evaluations, end of fiscal year evaluations, but we have like quarterly meetings with each of our employees to kind of go, and we ask them like specifically, put down your goals or what you want to accomplish. That way, it's kind of clear. Makes you think about what it is you want to accomplish for the year. And I always tell them, at the beginning of the fiscal year, whatever you put down, that's kind of a starting point. It's going to change, it's going to evolve, because there's going to be different things that come up. But at least you have a starting point of what it is you're working towards. And that way too,
Mhm.
you know what you're working towards, but then I also know what it is that you're interested in as well. So if the opportunity comes up that matches one of your goals, then I can say, oh, okay, well, I know that's their goal. So now I can put their name out there to be part of that opportunity.
And that's huge because now what you've also indicated is that you have a communication with your team on a regular basis. So there's a comfort level where they trust you. Trust
Yeah.
is huge. Let's speak to trust in a work environment.
Well, to me, that's the bedrock of what it is you're going to do. Like, as much as we have our engineering principles and we have the formulas and the calculations. At the end of the day, to accomplish anything as a team, you've got to be able to trust one another. I've got to know that if you tell me you're going to, get this report done by X date, that you're going to meet that date. And that's kind of the first thing I tell people when we interview them is, hey, I'm not here to monitor like where you're working from. I don't care if you go to Starbucks. I don't care if you're working in your house. I don't care if you come to the office. What I do care about is you do quality work, and that I can trust you that when you say
Mhm.
I'm going to get this done, that you can get it done on the time frame
Mhm.
that you say. And then vice versa, it goes the same way.
Trust.
I need them to trust in me that if they ask me for something or they need my help with something, then I'm gonna be there to help them. So that's one of the big things for me is I try to make myself as available as possible. If they have questions, something comes up, I don't want them to ever feel like they're nagging me or bothering me or anything like that. I want them to have trust and faith in me that they can come to me, ask me a question, ask me, tell me whatever their issues are, and I will work as best as I can to help resolve it.
Mhm. Too often we're so busy being afraid of what we might lose because we want to have an opinion and we try to just stay in a safe space, right?
Yeah.
But then that is eating at your soul and eating at your spirit if you're not able to have the relationship with the people that you see more often than your own family,
That that is true. That is
right?
true. That is true.
And so we have to really understand that dynamic at an early age because if we don't, then we'll be running and creating a fear factor versus being honest but respectful
Yes.
in saying what we need to do.
Yeah. And I think part of the big thing with that is getting people to understand how to work in teams early on. That was one of the big things in college. I remember we had a professor my freshman year who basically said, if you get put out of your team, the best grade you're going to get in this class is a C. And that's if you get 100% on everything else, because he valued the teamwork that much that his thing was, I'm not passing you in this class unless you can just knock everything else out of the park if you can't function in the team.
I love it.
And
And
that
that's
that's yeah.
real.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the work environment. You're rarely going to work by yourself completely on a project. You're always going to have a team, and you're always going to have to, like I said, you don't have to love each other, but you have to learn how to respect
At
them.
all. That's exactly right. And not only just respecting that person, respecting their opinions.
Yes.
And those are two different things, really.
Yes. Yeah.
And they don't
Very much.
always you know what? They don't always coalesce with one another, right?
Yeah, and that's so one of the things as my activity manager role, we do partnering, which is we have meetings with the client, our Navy client, and the regulators, where we go over different projects and any issues or concerns we have. And one of the things they make us do is they do the insights training and um, the what is it called, the training where they figure out your personality type. And
Oh,
so they
okay.
share that with the group, so everybody kind of knows each person's personality type and what things are
Oh, I
triggers for
love it.
them, what things, what things work well for them. So that way, as a team, we can kind of see where our trigger points are and what things are going to have somebody on edge, or what things that will be easy for them to get over. And it helps with really coming together as a team and try to come up with solutions together as a team, because everybody has, the Navy's got their perspective from being the client and the one who's driving the work, whether EPA and Virginia DEQ in this case have their perspective as regulators and what they want to see. So making sure that everybody's heard and everybody's thoughts and opinions are not just heard but valued is a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. And I just looked it up. Is that Myers-Briggs program that they
Yes.
have?
Yeah.
Aha. Okay. I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Yeah. And that I really highly recommend for people to be able to get an understanding of how to function in so many different areas, right?
Yes. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see yourself 10 years from now, 5 years from now?
So I'm looking at more on the operations side. So maybe a program manager, or maybe sales, but I think I'm leaning more towards the operations side, where I'm be a program manager or portfolio director type of role. But the biggest thing for me is I try to get experiences more so than trying to. So I had somebody tell me a couple years ago, don't shoot for the box, don't shoot for the title, shoot for the experiences that'll get you the experience you need. So when a position comes up, you can interview for it comfortably and feel like you have the experience to get it, because the title's always going to change. There may be somebody who's a VP of talent management right now, and then 5 years from now, that title doesn't exist anymore. And if your whole aim was to shoot for that title, and the title goes away, now what are you aiming for? So I try to look at it as I aim for getting the experience and learning as much as I can, so that when new positions open up, I have the experience to feel comfortable going in front of them and applying for the position.
I love that concept because it's real. That is real. And you have to be able to do the total analysis in order to get where you're going.
Right, right. And so that's why I've been trying to get experience in sales and the operations side, and I've got the experience in the talent supervisor side, and I've got the experience in the operations side as far as a project manager. So I've been getting some experience in sales, because regardless of what position I have, you need to understand all three facets of the organization to really lead people on that higher level as well. So you can't just say, I'm going to be a portfolio director, so I only need to understand the operations side. What portfolio director needs to understand how the sales works, and understand how the people work, because they've got to tie all that in to make sure that their portfolio is doing well. So
And that's really powerful. And so are you going to go back and get another degree, or are you just going to, what do you think you're going to do?
So as far as I got my bachelor, I got my master's. The only thing we left is my PhD, and I'm not doing that. I don't have a desire for a PhD. I got my PE. I'm probably going to get my PMP, and then mainly just making sure that I'm staying current on my PE and taking different courses, because that's, to me, that's the learning experience is making sure that whatever the new thing is, like right now, in my world, the site characterization remediation, PFAS is the big chemical concern. So trying to learn as much as I can
What's
about it.
PFAS? What do you say, PFAS?
So PFAS is a family of constituents that are found in just about everything: nonstick cookware, rain gear, firefighting foam, and it's one of those that it's really hard to break down and it accumulates quickly in the system. So the screening levels for it are really low as far as environmental concerns. So that's kind of been the big concern as far as cleaning up. I think there may be a big lawsuit against like DuPont or 3M, one of those chemical companies as well. But it is the new emerging chemical. So that's, I've had somebody ask me years ago, they said, you're in the remediation field. They said, well, what happens when you clean up everything? I said, when do you think that's going to happen? Because it's something we're doing right now that we think is a great idea. And then 10 or 15 years from now, we'll look back, that probably wasn't the smartest idea. Now we got to clean up that mess. So there's always something that goes on.
Right. That's right. That's right. And we have to take ownership for that bad decision that we made, right?
Right. I mean, I've got a site where years ago, the Navy, they had a bunch of batteries and they didn't know what to do with them. So they said, we're going to recycle them. What their idea of recycling was to crush all the batteries and build a road out of it. So the lead content on that road is, out the roof. Like, so that, we got to clean that up now. And, they, at the time, they thought they were doing something good.
Right.
Yeah. So But now you look at it like that was a horrible idea.
Like whose idea was that? Right,
Right.
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 Oh, that's hilarious. Sort of, right? Because then you got to deal with all of the environmental protection
Yeah.
agency getting in there.
Right.
That's crazy. So let's go back to looking at elementary, middle school, and high school, and then college. When we have young people who look like us, how should our communities and our parents, really communities, what should we be doing in our expectation for our government? You know, here I'm in Baltimore, and we've got problems trying to get connectivity, trying to get computers. I mean, that whole business with the COVID is just the biggest emergency to me. It's like red lights flashing on, and it's just crisis, crisis, crisis for our community, for
Yes.
Black communities and brown communities across this nation. And I saw it here. I see it here every day. And what should we be doing and what should be happening with our corporations in partnership with our community organizations to affect change?
Well, I will say I've seen it myself in that Baltimore because I went to high school in Millersville, Maryland area, so
Okay.
I am familiar with the area, and I played basketball with a lot of people, a lot of kids that in Baltimore City, and I think from the start it is about getting involved from a standpoint of if there's a community, if there's a day that they do like um, you know, whatever your career day is at the school, getting involved with that. Like I've been involved with multiple career days at the elementary school level, middle school level, and I can tell you from firsthand experience when some of the Black teachers come in there and they see a Black male that's an engineer coming there, their faces light up and they're like, "Oh, you got to come to my class." And I get pulled into more classes because they know that when they if you can show the kids that there's
Mhm,
somebody that looks like them that is
mhm,
doing something that is not what they think they can do, now they're like, "Oh well, maybe I can do that too." Especially when you can tell them, like,
mhm,
I came from similar to places that you may have came from, or I grew up similar to you, or whatever the case may be. Like, now they kind of can see that there's more there. But I think if corporations can involve themselves at the elementary level, even if it's just a career fair day or whatever the case may be, I think that makes a big difference in getting kids to understand that there's more out there. Because a lot of times they don't know. Even the parents don't know. Like I know my youngest brother. So out of the four of us, three of us are engineers. We all went to A&T, did civil engineering, and then my youngest brother went to NC State, did food science. And I didn't know I didn't think about a food scientist before, but he decided he was interested in food, but he wasn't interested in the math part of it. So he didn't want to do engineering, but he liked
my friend.
science. Yeah, he liked science. So my mom and him sat down and went and looked up different careers, and I think that's part of it is having the ability to get parents to look up stuff for their kids, help their kids out. Like I said, when I came home to my mom, I met a civil engineer. I want to do that. So that first thing she did was, okay, well, let's go look up what a civil engineer does. And then, she went out of her way. My mom, my dad, they went out of their way to make sure I understood what I was getting myself into. And they asked questions of other people. When we went to Bayer, they would pull people aside. Just walking down the thing, they pull people aside. What do you do? And they ask them questions about what they did, and they have us talk to them. And so I think part of it is it starts at home. As much as we want to put stuff on the schools and industry, they can help, and I think they can supplement things to a great extent. But we've got to get parents to understand that it truly starts with you because you're the one that your child's going to listen to more than anybody, and you're the one
Mhm.
that spends more time with them than anybody else. So getting them to understand that these are the things that can go on, and I think paying more attention to as parents paying more attention to what's going on in school, because a lot of schools have different activities that kids can get involved in. But I think on that end, getting the funding in place to help the kids get there to and from. Because sometimes parents, if you're a single parent and you're working all the time, how do you get your kid to and from these events?
Mhm.
So having ways to get those kids there, to these events, get them involved is the biggest thing. I think industry can help with that by helping with funding as well to help really get these kids involved in different events.
One thing I would like to add to what you're saying, and I agree with you, but in looking and have working in at-risk communities, we I just think that there needs to, and you're right about the schools can't do everything, and but there are some parents that don't have the wherewithal to do the kinds of things that we know we'd like to have done
Right,
in many
right,
households. It's just not. there.
Right.
Um, but what is there that I had this conversation with somebody not too long ago, and is, we still have the churches.
Yes.
What is that meeting place? Where's the meeting place where
Yeah.
we can go that is a space that we know is safe, right? Is
Yes.
safe for us emotionally, mentally, physically, and that's the church.
Yeah.
And maybe part of our in looking to the future, maybe part of that is identifying a way that that church becomes a community technology center,
Yes.
that church becomes that educational depot to be able to have children learning how to read or learning how to do whatever, that we've got to have a safe space. That's that
Yeah.
segue, right? There's
Right.
a segue
Right.
to get to where we need to be, and it has to be something that is national, and it's deployed with an expectation that there's an art outcome for partnerships with the school system.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And that's why I think part of it too is you see a lot of pricing out of people. So you have community centers, but then you start charging people for, well, the person who's struggling to make ends meet and their kid really needs this assistance. How are they going to pay for that? Where's that
Right,
money coming from?
right.
And I see that all the time where you have community centers, like they call it a community center, but then they start raising prices on it. Like, well, who you benefiting the community?
Hmm.
This should be more for those who truly need it. And those who truly need it a lot of times don't have the money to pay you those higher prices to be involved. It
Hmm.
shouldn't be a pay to play type of thing.
Right. And that I think is the real a real conversation, because there's consequences if we don't.
Yes.
And we see those consequences when we look at the crime rate and how
Yeah.
many people who are in the penal system that look like us.
Right.
Or if you're looking at the penal system, and instead of warehousing people in the penal system, how do we create a community technology center in the prisons and create some educational programming in the prison system that helps them with leadership and being prepared and ready to even be able to walk out and do something that's positive because their mind, their body, and their spirit is ready and willing.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the big difference. It can't be it's supposed to be rehabilitation, right? So my thing is, well, if it's supposed to be rehabilitation, you're supposed to be working towards getting them back to get ready to go back out in society. But if you don't have anything in place, now you're setting them up to end up right back where they started from.
That's exactly right. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
And PSO, by the way, when you're talking about the little community technology centers that are now charging, it costs it the the prison system, and far too many of them are private prison systems, and they're being paid big money to
Right.
warehouse our people.
Right.
So that's a
Exactly.
whole nother we go ahead. Another
Right.
conversation for another day. But think about how many engineers we have sitting there in the prison system, in the male and female facilities
Right. Right.
that look like us, right?
It's the minor differences starting at that element, because at elementary school stage is where they start to separate out kids of who the high performers are and who's not, and it follows them through middle school and through high school. So you're already kind of setting them up to not meet their expectations, because you already kind of said, oh, they're not going to be able to do much. You already put that in their head basically.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Oh, you're not. They're not good enough. We're not. We're
Right.
going to dismiss that. We're not going to put the time and the energy
Yeah.
in it. And I say this. I know we're talking about things, but this is what we want are more of you. We want more Nathaniels. We want more Marshes. We want more of our people to be giving back into our community, giving more and being responsive. But we have to create the environment. And if we all do our little part, no matter how big, then we
It
can
adds up.
affect change. Yes.
Yeah, it adds up. And
And
that's
if
I think that's part of the biggest thing that comes from people misconception of. They think that they got to do something grand. Like, no, start out small. You'll be surprised if you can change one or two kids' lives, then you've done something great. It doesn't have to be a large thing. It can be something small in your local community,
Mhm.
and that makes a big difference.
Mhm. You know what's beautiful about the BEA program? There's a whole program where the middle school kids come and go through
Yeah.
the career fairs. They get to see some of the things that are going on. They have these experiences, and it's really so beautiful because they're just so wide-eyed. They're walking around and they're just like, "Oh my goodness, what is all this? I've never seen this before." It is so beautiful. And then we have our college students who come. So, BEA is the place to be, literally, for
Yeah.
us to be able to transform our communities and to see ourselves being able to do that.
Yeah. Agree.
Give me three parting things that you want to tell our viewers.
Some of them we already kind of discussed, but one of them is don't be afraid to let people know what your goals and aspirations are. Um, Another one is, you know, don't be afraid to take on new challenges, step outside of your comfort zone. And then the last one is try to find people that to work around that don't necessarily agree with you, don't want to work in a silo, but you want to find people that you can work with because they'll challenge you. You know, when you work with folks that you don't necessarily agree with on everything, but that are you're all respectful of one another, then they're going to challenge you to step outside your comfort zone and become a greater person than what you ever imagined you could be.
That's powerful. And that you can even imagine. So you can't even imagine what's available to you until you open up your heart and your spirit to do it, right?
Right. Right.
You are wonderful, Mr. Price. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
I appreciate it.
Congratulations on your award. And you are rocking over there at Jacobs. We're
Thank you.
really excited for all that you've done. And so now you're part of the BEA family. You're
I
stuck.
appreciate it. All right.
All right, sir. Wishing you continued success.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I guess we got tonight and tomorrow. There's some great things going on.
Yes. Yes.
All right, sir. Take
All right.
care.
Thank you. All
Yes.
right.